Hello and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Pleased and happy to have Mike Goldstein. We've had some technical difficulties, but we're getting through it. Fun and joy and all the fun of the digital world. Like I said when we tried this earlier, briefly met Mike very briefly at FDIC. He was tackling dudes at the Mercedes booth and interviewed my boy RJ. We were together when you did a quick interview with RJ. Been following you on Instagram on the Cam Report, so I'm not going to ramble like I always do. Mike, welcome to the show and introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it. Mike Goldstein, Stickers is my nickname. Got it from the fire service when I first started. I've been in the fire service for 13 years, first responder field for over 20 years. Started as a dispatcher and then moved into the fire side of things. I run the Cam Report and have been doing that now for almost a year.
And for those that haven't had a chance to check it out, he's on Instagram putting up a ton of information. To be honest with you, I thought you worked for Mercedes. I've got actually I have a long history with the guys from Mercedes. When we I've told the story 1,000 times, but we switched when I worked in Montgomery County as a battalion chief. We ended up switching our hose out. We were getting new fire engines. We were going to redo our attack lines. And the fire chief came to me and said, "Hey, look, we're getting new fire engines in the budget. We budgeted for hose lines, nozzles, and things like that. So, why don't you do that as well?" It's like a kid in a candy store for me.
Right.
And we tested a bunch of hose. Mercedes at the time was not as well known. Those dudes were phenomenal. Kevin Greenlee from the Fire Store, who deals with that in the Washington, Maryland metropolitan area, bought some hose down, and we tested that amongst other hose, and we ended up going with the Mercedes. The cool thing is that the way that their hose was put together, we were actually able to go back to 1.5-inch hose for our cross lays. We went from 1.75 back to 1.5 inch. People thought we were nuts. And I told them, I said, dude, I'm getting 150 gallons per minute out of this 1.5-inch hose. And we ended up changing our entire fleet. All 30 some odd fire engines all had 1.75 cross lays. And it's been like that for 8 years, maybe a little bit longer. Haven't heard one complaint yet. I've since retired from Montgomery, but those guys are still using it. I've been on a handful of fires as a battalion chief. Kudos and my hat's off to the dudes from Mercedes. They treated us like gold. I go by and see them every year when I'm at FDIC. They actually remembered me. It's like, "Oh, you're the Montgomery County guy." But yeah, so long history there. So it was that's where I first saw you when you were interviewing RJ. I was kind of standing off to the sidelines, but been following you on Instagram. Like I said, you're putting up a ton of really good information. It's fresh to see. I'm going to say from a younger guy because I know you're younger than I am, but it's fresh to see guys that are riding the apparatus that are passionate about the job. And that's one of the things that we say on our fire engineering radio show is that it is okay to be into the job.
Yes, sir.
Some people are 100% balls to the wall into the job 24/7, 365. Some people might say that's not healthy, but it's in our DNA. It's in our blood. And then some people, like, I'll go to work for 24 hours. And then when my shift's over, I go home, I turn it off. Not to say that they're any better or worse than anybody, as long as you're into the job when you're at the job. But I know you're into the job when you're off the job. It probably drives your wife crazy. It drives my wife crazy, but she knew what she was getting into when we got married. So, but so tell us a little bit about your fire service career, how you got into it, your first generation, third, fifth, whatever. And where are you located? You don't necessarily have to tell me where you work, but where you located so people kind of understand where you are.
Absolutely. So I'm out of Milford, New Hampshire, and I work for the town of Derry Fire Department. Been there for about almost 2 years. September will be 2 years. And honestly, I'm first generation. My wife, her father was on the Nashua Fire Department for 28 years. And when I met them, I worked for an ambulance company called Rockingham Regional Ambulance. I was a dispatcher there. And I used to work directly with Nashua Fire as dispatching their ambulances and all the other stuff that comes along with it. And my family has a military background. I never really was interested in joining the military. Funny enough, I didn't like the structure and I didn't want to deal with all the rules and regulations. And lo and behold, now I'm in a paramilitary type of structure anyways. But my family has always been kind of that military field. My mother, she's retired out of the public health service. She retired as a captain. My younger sister, she's a lieutenant commander in the Navy. And I have a twin sister and she's retired captain and she was in the Army. So I come from the military side of the family, never in the fire service field. So I'm the first in my family. I'm a Jewish kid. My family comes from New York. So, for my background, we never really consider ourselves to be doing that type of work. Every time I drive the rig, I love driving. I love driving the engine. It's a lot of fun. And every time I'm driving the engine, I just think, man, my dad could never do this stuff. He was not that type of guy that liked to drive engines, get his hands dirty. Sweating was not his thing. He usually showers like 5 times a day. So it's a completely different world of what I'm doing compared to what my parents have done. My parents are very both into education. My dad's got like 3 masters. My mom's got 2 masters, all college grads. I'm actually the only one in my family who's never gone to college, and I have a blue collar job. So go figure.
Well, at the end of the day, are you happy? That's what matters.
Dude, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and it's funny. My dad, my mom divorced my dad when I was 2. My dad he worked for the government. Worked started off at NASA up here in Maryland, and then went to ATF and retired out of the Treasury Department. So that was his background. That type of work. And when my mom remarried my stepdad, he was already in the fire department. He was in the military. He did in the Navy in Vietnam, and then when he got out, he started as I want to say he started as a police officer in the town of Greenbelt in Maryland. Joined the volunteer fire department, really liked it, and then got hired in Washington D.C. And he was a DC firefighter for about 7 or 8 years during the height of the racial unrest and riots and all that stuff. And decided he was going to switch over back to the police department. He retired as a police officer, but he was a volunteer firefighter for, his whole life. So he got me into it. Fire department was never on my radar. Of course, they got married when I was 7. That's all I knew. My mom used to take me to the local firehouse where he was volunteering. Vaguely, barely remember that. But yeah. So, and it's funny because my grandfather, my stepdad's dad, my grandfather, he joined the fire department after my stepdad joined the fire department. So it was kind of a reverse third generation type thing, but it was the family business.
Yeah.
In the day that I was able to join the juniors and at 12 years old and then be able to become a senior member at my local fire department, I never looked back. Got hired when I was 18. I mean, you talk about just fortunate and 100% into the job drives people crazy, but I love it. Love every aspect of it. Uh, you know, it's just, I did not like driving the engine company. I always felt that I was too young to be chained to a pump panel when there was a fire. I'd rather be on the truck or if I had to be on the engine, be riding in the back and to be able to go in. But yeah, man, it's something. So you said you're from New York. Obviously, you're not from New York. You're from New York, so
Yeah,
you must
no.
be
So
upstate.
my family was all from Buffalo. They all originated from Buffalo, New York. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So
Okay.
I've been all around. My parents, the same thing. My parents are divorced. They divorced when I was 3. So I bopped around to different states wherever my mom lived because of her job in the military. She went to a lot of different places for her posts. So one of the places I used to live in, who I actually really enjoyed, was Rockville, Maryland, right up the road from you.
Yep.
So I lived in Rockville for about 6-ish years. Worked for biotech companies when I was out there. Didn't know what I really wanted to do. I know I loved drinking a lot when I was going down to DC to hang out, like going to Adams Morgan and DuPont Circle. And because again, a New Hampshire kid going to live in just outside of DC and being 21 years old, it was a lot of fun. And I took great advantage of knowing all the bars in that area. So I had a lot of fun just running around and getting into trouble in DC. And actually in Bethesda was like, again, it was right in my backyard. So I'd go to Bethesda all the time and just hang out, go to all the bars. So, and then I missed home a lot, so I came back to New Hampshire. That's where I pretty much called home. I had a lot of friends that I wanted to see. I was in a bad place when I moved to Maryland. I had no place to stay. My dad and my stepmom, they picked up, moved to Arizona. And honestly, I don't like the dry heat and I don't like Arizona at the time. So I decided to live with my girlfriend and her parents. And I was living in their attic for a time being. And my mother thought I was crazy for doing that. And she says, come to live in Maryland with us, and did that. Got my head kind of straight and then went back to New Hampshire.
Now it's funny, how we always say the fire service is a big family, but you said you did time in Rockville, and that's where RJ he came from Connecticut to Rockville, and he the same thing, kid in a candy store, leaving Cromwell, Connecticut, this little town, gets into Rockville, and his intent, like all of us, was to live at the firehouse and go to college. And when you start missing calls, it's like I want to live at the firehouse and run some calls and maybe go to college. And a lot of them that way. I grew up in Montgomery County, so I grew up on the eastern side of Montgomery County. I was I worked my way through the ranks. When I made captain, I went to Rockville, to the downtown station. And that's where I met RJ. So I was there, and then I did a few years there, and then transferred over to the Twin Brook station in Rockville. As a lieutenant, I worked in downtown Bethesda. Loved it. I love the urban environment, and
Yeah.
with the high rises. Although we didn't run a lot of we didn't run a lot of fires in Bethesda. There's a lot of money
I was just
down
gonna say
there,
a lot of money at
but a
Bethesda.
lot of calls, a lot
Yeah.
of bullshit calls. In Rockville, we ran a ton of calls, and got some decent fires. Yeah, there was. It's unfortunate that you weren't on the fire department radar there, because we would have pulled you under our wing and pulled you right into the firehouse, and
Dude,
you'd have had a place to live.
I tell you what, I wish
And
I
life
knew.
might be different for you now had you done that.
I tell you what, I wish I knew that there was actually a live-in program. So when I moved to Maryland, I was about 18, 19 years old. I had no direction in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And had I known there was actually right up the road a live-in program for the fire service, I would have done it, man. Absolutely. And unfortunately, I missed it. I missed that golden opportunity. I could have started at such a young age and probably would be working with you right now. But
Never
it's
know.
or RJ, right?
Or RJ, absolutely.
So it sucks that I missed that opportunity, and I talk about that a lot. Actually, is growing up, I didn't know about these opportunities. I didn't know about the Explorer program or the Junior Firefighter program. When I was in high school, I dropped out of high school and I got my GED. I probably would have stayed in school if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, the fire service, you can get an education in doing this. Get your college degree. You can do a living program." And as soon as you finish that, you can come out with your fire science program and move into the fire service, and you could retire. Like if I started like at 18 years old, I could be getting close to retirement, and been living really pretty good. But I didn't know those things existed. So I pretty much did everything the wrong way. Everything you'd probably do, I did it the wrong way. I didn't like school. I decided to work instead, dropped out to work full time when I was in my teens. My family didn't really have a lot of money. My dad was always working. I mean, I'd come home, the power would be shut off because they couldn't pay the bills. Food was scarce, and I'd always get in fist fights and just do stupid things because that's my upbringing. And then again, my mother didn't really know what I was getting into because I kind of kept it a secret. Because had she known that life was kind of shitty where I was, she definitely would have come in and scooped me up. But I liked hanging with my friends, and I liked getting into trouble. And again, I think honestly, looking back, it's good life experience. That way, especially I think in the fire service, you need life experiences to be able to understand the people that you're working with. Not even in our under our house in our firehouses, but the patients and other people that we have to deal with in life. And if you've never been through struggles, if you've never been through hardships, how can you relate to your patients? How can you relate to those people that you're calling you for help? And there's nothing wrong with having great childhoods. Don't get me wrong. Like it's great that people can have a great upbringing. They have parents are both together. They've had food on the table every night, and I think that's a wonderful environment to have. But it's also a double-edged sword because when you have to deal with some of these big problems, you don't know how to relate to them. You don't have that empathy or sympathy for them because you've never lived it. So how can you say, I know how you feel, when you've never actually been in that situation?
Yeah, everything you said, 100% across the board. A couple of things I want to pick apart there. And I told you, we're going to have a conversation. It's
Yeah,
never going
bro.
to go the direction that you think it's going to go. But I do want to pick up on a couple of things you said, where you said you didn't realize the opportunities that were out there for the living program. So to the volunteers that are listening to this program, we have a hard time retaining. So just think, if you were to be able to set up a plastic table in the lunchroom at the local high school, get permission with membership applications, and say, this is what the fire department has to offer, kind of like the military recruiter. Hey, this is what we have to offer. You get your, while you're going to high school, you can come and ride the fire engine. When you graduate and you turn 18, hey, we got a bunk room. You can live in the firehouse for free. Your rent is to get training and run calls. And by the way, the training's free. And if it's something that you really like, the job pays pretty good, wherever you go. So those opportunities are out there. So the volunteers that are out there listening, I know on the career side, we go out and we beat the bushes to try to find applicants, but it's the same thing on the volunteer side.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't recognize what is available. And Montgomery County has a huge live-in program. High school cadets, where I'm working at in Frederick right now, we have the high school internship program, the high school cadets. It's a 2-year program. A lot of the fire departments in the mid-Atlantic area, Baltimore, Washington, Maryland, Baltimore, Washington, even Northern Virginia, they all have bunk rooms in their firehouses, and you can live at the firehouse. And if you want to eat dinner, it's usually like $7 for a kick-ass meal.
Yeah.
So it can be done. So understanding that those opportunities that are out there. Yeah, had you joined Rockville, I mean, you'd have been like, "Damn, I didn't know this was here." We'd have probably crossed paths. Definitely, if you were living in Rockville, you'd have crossed paths with RJ.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is. Like when I talk to Hank and I talk to RJ and I talk to you, I'm like, these are all awesome dudes. And had I known this existed, again, it would have probably been a different world that I've been living in right now. And to take it a step further, when we talk about going into schools and educating the students about volunteers and or careers in the fire service, honestly, I think we need to hit on the kids that are the at-risk youths, the ones that are at risk of dropping out of school. Their grades are low. They don't have directions in life. I was that kid. You know, I was, my grades sucked. I was hardly ever in school. And I had someone like pulled me inside, say, hey, you know, I see something in you. And I think this could be a good field for you, and turned me towards that fire department, or showed me that I could be more. Again, like military does a really good job. They're in the high schools. They want people to know about the service in the military. We need to get into schools more often. I know we do career day. A lot of places do career days. They have the fire department set up. Like in my state, they have our Lakes Region Community College. They have a career day there. All the departments in the state, they'll go and we'll recruit. We have all our stuff set up so the college kids know about it. But we got to do it in the high schools. You got to get into the high schools and let the kids know there is life after college, or there is life after high school, and do it now. Like what you're doing right now. I always tell my kids, I have twin teenage girls, and now they're in ninth grade. And I tell them, now the clock is ticking. Everything you're doing matters. Your grades matter. Your performance matters. People are watching. Colleges are watching. If you want to get into a good school, what you're doing now matters. And honestly, I wish, or I'd like to see that still happen, where we can have fire departments get into the high schools and really just have a talk with the kids and say, hey, this is a really cool career. We should do more about promoting that. Now, also on that other edge of it is, we do a disservice to ourselves because we talk about the bad things all the time: cancer, suicide, heart attacks, PTSD. There's a lot of things that we talk about that doesn't make it sound very good to join, right? So if I was 18 years old and everyone's always telling me about all the bad stuff, not the cool stuff like fighting fires and, you know, car extrications and hanging out at the firehouse and having adult sleepovers, but like, you know, like all the bad stuff, we promote the bad stuff a lot. And I don't want to say we need to hide it, but how well are we doing our recruiting when that's all we talk about is all the negative side of things?
Right. And unfortunately, the negative does come with the job. I think it's important that we do hype up on the good stuff. You know, like when I had Jason Rivera on here, we were talking about, you know, the friends that you make in the fire service, the friends that you will keep forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a 30-year life. You know, if you're doing a 24/48 shift, a 30-year life, this is your second family, hands down. And a lot of it's funny. My wife will say, I call on the phone. I'm on the phone with you maybe 3 minutes, and you rush me to get off the phone. But somebody calls from the fire department. Next thing you know, you're on the phone for 3 hours. You're talking, gossiping, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of positive that comes with the fire service, but it's also important that we address the negative because we've let it go for so long. We made it sound like you know, well, we can't talk. Not necessarily talk about our feelings, but talk about how what's affecting us, or something's affecting me, or I'm off, something's not right inside. What do I do? Do I hold it in, or do I, you know, try to put on a brave face, or do I, you know, break down and just say like, hey man, I need help? So the negative does come with it, but there's a lot of positives that can come out of those negatives. There's a lot of things out there for firefighters that are struggling, that are having issues. You know, we just finished up June, which was Men's Mental Health Month, and there's a lot of resources at our fingertips now. Mm-hmm. That as leaders in our organization, as officers, as chief officers, senior staff, you need to make sure that your people understand that we have things out there for you. And calls and events that happen on the job affect everybody differently. You know, you could go your whole career seeing, you know, all kinds of death, destruction, and things like that. We deal with it with dark humor. We talk to each other about it. We work our way through it. But then there's a couple of calls. It could be one call and just bam.
Well, like
Put you
they
in
said, right? You got that bucket, and that bucket just keeps filling up until one day you can't hold any more in, and it starts spilling over, and you don't even know it was full to begin with. It could just be that one extra call that just makes it spill over, and that's why I love that we are promoting that, and we're letting people know, like, you need to talk about the issues that are bothering you. Don't let it boil up. And again, we don't even know it's bothering us. Like it's like you said, you can go your whole career and nothing could bother you, and it'd just be that one call that sets you over the edge. You didn't know that everything else was just in that backpack, and those rocks are just making your backpack heavier until you just tip over. And that's why it's good to, like, my department, we're really good about talking about if we have a tough call. Like, we want to make sure that we're actually communicating, and our officers are good at communicating that. And me, as being more senior, I'm one of the oldest people on my shift usually. So if I have a probie, and it's like, we have a couple of kids that are really, really young and they haven't seen a lot of stuff yet. So if I hear that they went on a bad call and I see them if they're coming off shift and I'm coming on, I'll usually ask them, like, are you okay? Was this the first time you saw something like this? And usually they'll say yes. Like, if you need to talk, because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to your officer to talk about it. And that's the big thing that everyone needs to know, is that if you're feeling down, or if you're feeling like you don't understand why this call happened, or why would somebody, commit suicide? Why would somebody smash their car into a tree? Or, why would somebody die this way? You don't have to ask your officer that question. It can be your partner. It can be a senior guy. If like, usually I go towards the guys who are very quiet, because those are the ones who've seen the shit and know the shit, and they're humble and they got humility. And those are the ones I usually kind of cling to. And those are the ones I'll talk to, because I know they understand what's going on. And I want to let those younger guys know, like, if you need to talk to me, we can talk. You don't have to wait and make an appointment with your chief or with your captain or your lieutenant. It's open lines of communication. Everybody should feel comfortable enough to talk to anybody who's in their department.
And it's important. I've said it across this podcast and the other podcasts that I do. As the officer, you need to know your people. If you're sitting in your office all day long looking at paperwork and a computer and all that crap, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You got to come out. You got to see your people. You got to meet them eye to eye, and you have to know when minor things are off. You also have to have a good rapport with your technicians or your master firefighters, because those guys are kind of running the floor for the officer. They're seeing, the younger guys. The younger guys are probably coming to them, if something's bothering them, instead of bringing it to the captain or the lieutenant. So that technician or that master firefighter or whatever can come to the captain and say, hey, you might want to keep an eye on so and so. They're a little quiet, a little off, the not
Yeah.
normal. And you have to be able to have those hard conversations, because we don't want to see somebody else take their life because they couldn't deal with whatever it was that was bothering them. This is a rough job. It is, and it's not the cause, it's the home life too, the time away from home and things like that, how we process stuff. But yep, like you said, it isn't all bad. So you can't just say, like, yeah, man, the fire service is a great job. Suicide rates are up, alcoholism's up, drug use is up, but man, it's a really good job. They need to understand that is a possibility. But for the most part, what do we get out of it? Well, what you get out of it is your desire to help. And that's, it draws us to it. That type A personality. We want to fix shit.
Yeah.
It drives our wives nuts because we're always trying to fix shit. But we want to fix problems, things that happen that are catastrophic and have to put the wheels in motion right away. We look at that as a challenge to make something better, as well as the working fires and things like that. I used to tell people, when I was a firefighter, I was, man, I hope we catch fire, and I hope we catch a good fire. And when I became a chief officer, it's like, I don't wish anything to catch on fire, but if it does catch on fire, I'd like to be there when that happens. So kind of change your tune. You don't want to go around talking about how we burn somebody's house up, but that's, I equate that to the fighter pilots in the military and the Air Force and the Marines and the Army, where they're flying their planes, train their whole life to drop bombs and shoot shit. And that's what they want to do. We train our whole career to pull hand lines, go into fires, cut holes in roofs, vent, enter, search, make rescues, auto extrication. If you're a paramedic, working that trauma or that cardiac arrest, we train our entire lives for that. We don't wish it to happen to somebody, but if it does, we want to be there when it happens so we can fix it. It's a great job. But it does have its dark sides. But like you said, I think that the fire service is getting a lot better at recognizing what we go through, our sleep patterns, our eating habits, the mental part of it. And a lot of departments are now providing mental health experts at our fingertips. I know in Frederick, we hired a lady that I actually know. I worked with her husband in Montgomery County. Her dad was the chief, one of the chiefs in Montgomery County. So she is our mental health expert for the fire service. And to say that she knows about firefighters is an understatement. So she knows where we live. And I think departments need to start grabbing on to things like that. Peer support, that's another thing. We got good peer support.
Yes.
they're there to help. When I talked about this at the last couple of podcasts, I don't want to end on that's a downer note, but I know we wanted to talk a little bit about our vulnerabilities. We talked a little bit offline about toxic leadership and leaders that just shit on morale and make things bad, and then how that gives us that, like you had talked about, the performance anxiety in the fire service, performance anxiety. And then, how do we face that? How are you facing that when you see it? Because it happens everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. And how are you dealing with officers and chief officers that are just pessimistic, cynical, and always looking for the bad? A lot of them want to look for the bad or create something bad so they can look like they fixed it, so it makes themselves feel good while they're kind of putting everybody else down.
Well, it's tough. Like, so I talk a lot about that in my podcast. I don't hide where I came from. I don't hide the toxic environment that I left. And it's a tough road to go down. And it's funny. I talk about this a lot with people that I happen to just be shooting the shit with. And we are great as humans. We can, especially guys in the fire service, we'll talk about our family, right? We'll talk about like, or my dad was abusive, or, my mom was an alcoholic, or just figuratively speaking, whether my dad wasn't, and neither was my mom. But
Right.
we can do that. We'll open up about the most inner secrets of our family history. But when it comes about opening up about the bad things that happen in our firehouses, we don't, because we're afraid of being disloyal. We're afraid of being blacklisted and ostracized and being alone. And that is more tremendous and more devastating to us as firefighters, and especially, honestly, males, because it's a lot of people have asked about that, because we're like wolves and we want to be in that pack. And when I was dealing with my stressors in life, and when I was having these issues with my former department, I was very much alone. When I spoke up, I was the only one speaking up. And that's when people ask me about my platform, of why I came out with this, is because it just sparked something in me. Once I left that department, I realized I'm free. I can actually talk without being in fear of getting in trouble, without fear of going into the chief's office and him bitching at me because I made a post about leadership, or that I spoke to somebody about not being happy. Every time when I was in that previous department, if there was an issue, your feelings were repressed. Your feelings didn't matter. And you can talk about them as much as you wanted to other people. As soon as he heard that you were having issues or problems, he dismissed them. And my first experiences with my former, he was a captain at the time, is I had made a complaint about him to my lieutenant. And this was when I was a call guy and we're working shifts there. And he was just, something was really bad. And I didn't like the way he treated me. Again, I was like about 30 years old when I started into the fire service, started late. And he didn't like the fact that I went to somebody else and complained about the way he was treating me. And it got to the deputy chief, then the chief, and then they had a conversation. He then found me in the bay. And I'll remember it clear as day. This is like 13 years ago. And he asked me, do I have a vagina? And I said, I'm sorry. And he said, do you have a vagina? And I said, no, I do not. He said, then why are you acting like a pussy? And that was the moment, that was the day that I realized there is no dealing with that person, that there is no, I'm sorry, that there is no, hey, I'm sorry I made you feel this way. He's a narcissist. And I could never tell anyone about that story, nor complain about it, in fear of losing my position within the fire service at that time. Because I was a call guy, I loved being a firefighter. And right at that moment, I couldn't be a firefighter anywhere else. So no one spoke up. All these things that happened within that fire department, nobody spoke up, because in fear of him pushing them out. He had that power to just make them feel like shit and to stress them out so much that they said, you know what? This isn't my full-time job. I'm a call member. I don't need this shit. And they would leave. And they wouldn't say anything to human resources. They wouldn't say anything to our town managers, because they didn't want to stir a hornet's nest, or they wanted to continue to be on that department. So they just wouldn't say anything. And then once I finally had the balls to leave, that made me realize I can have a voice. Now, I don't mention his name. I have much respect for his family, but I learned a lot what not to do. And I learned that some people are just never going to apologize. And some people are they're never going to feel that they're wrong. And I'm not looking for closure, but with having my podcast and having a voice now, other people have come to me and said, my God, I thought I was the only one. I thought I had these issues in my fire department, and it made me feel better knowing that you had those same issues. So we can talk about that. It's really important for us to understand that we're not alone, that their toxic leadership's all over the place. But the biggest thing I've learned from is that You have to be an adult about it. If someone's mistreating you, if someone's making you feel like shit, if you have a toxic leader who, no matter what you do, you can never do anything right, and he's just going to crap all over you, or he or she's going to crap all over you, you got to speak up. And if it's not working out and you've tried it for years of speaking up and it's still not working, then whatever you do for complaints, whatever you do to try to remedy it is not going to work. You need to find a new home. And that's what I did. I finally had the balls to say, you know what? I can't do this anymore, and I'm leaving. And I left for something much better, for a department that actually cares about their people. I mean, everybody has their issues, right? Like, no one's ever perfect. No department's ever perfect. But I don't have those issues anymore. For me, it's like, I don't get to use a certain nozzle. Okay. And like I always tell people, that's my biggest issue, is because I don't have the most best nozzle that I want. The life is good. Or I don't have the most awesome hose or the newest extrication tools. That's not a big problem with me. The fact that I have great leaders, the fact that I have great people that I work with and they give a shit about me, that means a lot to me. My previous department, nobody had each other's backs. And once I left, people told me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you were treated that way. I should have stood up. I should have said something. And I don't hold any grudges against those guys, because I understand it's very, very tough for them to speak up, because they don't want to be victimized and they don't want to be targeted by him. It's like being taken under the wing of a dragon, right? If you're under that wing, he's not going to bother you. You're going to get what you want. He's going to make deals with you. But once you step outside underneath that wing and you go on your own, you're his enemy. And that's how I felt.
The good thing about that, the good part of that, is that you saw it, you recognized it, and as you move forward in your career, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be like that. I know what that looks like, and I'm not going to be that way. So, the good thing about the fire service is you can learn from everybody, including bad leaders.
Honestly, it's a blessing I had bad leaders. It really is. Like, I look back and I'm thankful, because now I know what not to do. And I'm never going to be like that. It's honestly, in my life, I've had abusive step parents, and I know that makes me a better parent. Even if I had nurturing, loving parents all around, I'd be a nurturing, loving person. But I could have gone down that same cycle like my step parents did. My step parents were abusive, and I could have taken that cycle and done that to my kids, but I chose not to. And I know what to do to be a better person. Same thing with these crappy leaders, is that maybe they had a tough childhood. Maybe they were mistreated in the fire service and they couldn't break that cycle. They didn't realize they actually were blessed with having that negative environment and that negative experience, and making themselves a much better leader and making themselves something so much better to make and inspire all of us to become better. I could have been like, man, I had the greatest chief. He was amazing, and learn about his background. And maybe it was a really shitty background, but that never fazed him. He just wanted to exude love and positive reinforcement. But instead, it was just negative and shitting on people.
And a lot of times they don't recognize that they are that way. In their mind, they're just thinking they're business as usual, and nobody's calling them on it. And once you recognize that, like you see, you had the ability. Is like, I'm done with that. I had somebody, when I first started off in Montgomery County. I had a career firefighter, a little older than me, was I was still a volunteer. So back in the 80s, it was like, oh, you're a volunteer. You're a career guy now. You can't volunteer anywhere anymore. You're stealing jobs. You're taking food out of their mouths. All that stuff. And I would hear that all the time from one particular person. So finally, I was a 19-year-old kid. I finally said, look, if it pisses you off that much, if what I do affects you so bad, next shift, bring a gun to work, put it to my head, and pull the trigger. If you're not going to do that, shut the fuck up. Never had a problem like that.
Bold move, my friend. Bold move.
And it was just one of those, it's like, I'm tired of listening to your shit. I'm done. Never was an issue after that. But, I had the blessing of having really good leaders and learned a lot of good traits from them. And then I had some leaders that were okay, but they had some bad traits. And, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Put that in my mental
But
Rolodex. I'm
it
not going
means
to be that way.
it means a lot to me when I see people now that actually who are in prominent positions to be able to showcase that we don't have to be victims anymore, and that there are chiefs that are saying, hey, there's bad leaders. And I honestly, I hold David Rhodes up on that pedestal, because David Rhodes has made such an impact on just that topic alone, right? Like, I'm reading this quote right here. There's been little focus on the mental health effects of poor leadership. We need to talk about PTSD because we can blame that on an incident beyond our control, but we don't want to talk about the root cause of the majority of the stress that causes us issues: organizational vindictiveness, discrimination, favoritism, and exclusion. He nails it. That's exactly how I felt. That's exactly what I dealt with. When I complained, I was excluded. When I was at my lowest of my low at that department, I was alone. And I dealt with people who were just, that person was vindictive. And it's so real. And every time he talks about that and I see his quotes, it hits home to me because workplace PTSD is a real thing. And when I started my new job, the first year, it was literally like maybe the first 6 months, I actually had nightmares. I was at state, I was on shift, and I had a dream that that chief and that assistant chief showed up to my place of work to talk to my chief to get me fired. It like they haunted me in my dreams because I was so nervous and so scared that I actually dreamt about them trying to ruin it for me. It took a long time to recover that. And I'm still recovering from that. But and so when you ask like, what do you do to help that or try to fix it, is obviously is getting out of that bad environment. Therapy is super key, and this is not the EAP, right? The employee assistance program. Honestly, it don't work because it's just people who really don't know you. You got to seek out therapy. You got to seek out the people that really know how to deal with us, because like you said it earlier, we're alpha males, we're alpha personalities, and we don't want to admit that we need help. But we got to find those certain people that get us, that know how to deal with our personalities, that can sit us down and not bullshit us and be real with us. And so you got to find those counselors that know how to deal with first responders so they can give us the hard, cold facts and help us.
Yeah, it's and you're finding more and more of them coming into the fire service and things like that. It goes back to, if you've got a tight shift, you can talk to each other there. One of the things that you, as you move forward in your career, and I tell people this, I said, just because you're wearing the white shirt or you got the cross bugles or whatever, you should never stop listening to people, including the people that are just coming out of recruit class and still on probation in the firehouse. Sit down and talk to them. You'd be surprised of the things that they've done, what have they done in their life? How do they see the fire service versus how we see it? You should always be listening to what people are saying, and you can start to pick up on things. And when you have those bad leaders, as if you're a battalion chief or an assistant chief or operations chief or whatever, you should be looking at your crews and seeing if they're functioning correctly. Are they kind of dysfunctional on the fire ground? That leads to, there's a bigger issue going on, and I need to sit down and figure out what the hell's going
I
on.
think
Because
any good leader should also reflect upon themselves, right? They should always be taking inventory of their own actions. And if they're a good leader, not questioning themselves, but I think anybody who really gives a shit about their performance and who they are as a leader or senior guy or a probie, you should be constantly reflecting upon yourself. Am I performing to my maximum? Am I a good person? Am I leading the right way? Am I being too hard on them? Am I being a pushover? Those are things that we should be constantly reevaluating ourselves. Because we're not perfect. And I think it's really important that we understand that we're humans and we are going to make mistakes. But as humans, we have the ability to have self-awareness. And self-awareness is super key in our line of work. And you can lie to yourself all you want. And you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm the best person. Everyone loves me. And gosh darn it, people like me, right? You can try that all you want, but if you really don't know your self-awareness and everyone is hating you because you're just such a crappy person or you're a poor performer, you have the toxic leaderships, but you have the underperformers, you have to constantly self-evaluate, and those leaders need to do that themselves.
I've told people, when we talk about moving up through the ranks, and I try to impress upon people, and I say, don't be in such a hurry to want to push through the ranks. Yeah. Spend some time at each level to learn the job. I see people that go from firefighter to lieutenant and have not really learned the job, and now they're expected to be that person to not only solve critical issues on the fire ground, but the harder part is solving the critical issues in the station with the people. And if you don't have that experience under your belt, because you're flying through the ranks, you're not going to be able to help the people that need the help. You're going to ultimately end up being the problem. And you'll find that because you don't have that experience and because you don't have that time in the fire service, people are going to start to try to circumvent you and do things their own way, and then it just snowballs into this big pile of crap where your people aren't performing because you're not able to give them the expectations of how to perform because you don't know what those expectations are. So I tell people, I was like, look, whether you're on the career side or the volunteer side, take the time learn the job, learn all about the job, and then progress through the ranks. And then as you hit a rank, don't just look and say, okay, I'm a lieutenant. I have to be a lieutenant for 2 years. So in 24 months, I could sit for the captain's test. And oh, by the way, in that 24 months, I've probably run one fire and I was fourth due and I was a rapid intervention team. So I've never been in charge of a fire. I've never been the first in engine company on a fire. And now I'm going to be a captain. And then you run that cycle. Oh, I got to be a captain for a year before I can sit for the battalion chief's test. You've put yourself in a situation where you have not learned the job, and the catch up that you have to do is compounded as you move through the ranks. People that went from firefighter to lieutenant, it was 2 years just to learn how to be a beginning lieutenant, an okay lieutenant. It would take 2 years. Stop and smell the roses. Enjoy the job. There's a lot that you get out of it. Stay a firefighter for 7 years. See if you can get to a busy company.
Yeah.
Ride different pieces of apparatus, because all that's going to do is it's going to make you a more solid firefighter as you move forward. Then go take the technician's exam. Make sure that you can drive every piece of apparatus that your department has. If they have engines and trucks, towers, pillars, tankers, rescue squads,
Yeah.
become a driver on all that stuff, because as you get promoted to lieutenant, you don't know where you're going to end up. If you've never ridden a rescue squad, now you're riding the front seat of one. How are you going to lead them guys? When it comes time to, they're going to be looking to you, and you're going to be looking at your driver, to kind of lead you along. So
You gotta
enjoy the
appreciate that
fire service.
process.
What's that?
You gotta appreciate the process,
Yes.
right?
And like I said in the very beginning, it is okay to be into the job. You don't have to be into the job as sick as I am. That it's 24/7 is always the fire service. And like I said, it drives my wife crazy because my phone makes all kinds of noises for all the departments that I'm in. It's okay to be into the job, and it's also okay to be into the job only when you're at the job, and then you go home. It's okay to treat the job like a job, as long as when you're on duty, you're there 100% and you're doing your job.
My wife actually, she was making, she loves to bust on me all the time. And so she was actually talking about how I've actually now learned to take more time off with this new job as opposed to the old job, because it was also in the community I live in. So I was afraid to take time off. I was afraid I was going to miss a big job. I was afraid that they can't perform without me. It was this whole attachment, and it was who I identified as well. I was stickers, the stickers, the firefighter of this certain department, and that was my identity. And I felt like I couldn't live without that identity, and I had to be there every single moment. I mean, I was all in it. I was at every function. I was at every waffle breakfast. I was at every detail. I was at every event. I was there. Every fire, every big call. I was there dialing. I missed kids' birthdays. I mean, you name it, I was there. I was completely 120% in. And then I realized once I left that department that, you know what, I do need to take a step back, and I need to be a father, and I need to be a husband. And I can still love the fire service, and I could still be really into it. But I also need to make sure I'm here for my kids. I need to make sure I'm here for my wife. I need to help take care of the house, and I need to take care of me. And if you're constantly just so absorbed in this one thing, you're going to miss a lot. And then when you retire, you're going to sit back and go, holy crap, where did everything go? Where did everyone go? Where's my kids? Where's everything that I worked so hard for? And honestly, because for me, that was that big moment. Once I left that department, I realized that they don't care that Mike existed. If you go to that department, there is no Mike Goldstein, the firefighter, on that wall. If you go into that department and you ask about me, people are going to say who. They're going to keep going. The trucks are going to go out the door. Same thing when you retire, right? The next year, there's going to be 5 other guys who just moved to that department, and you show up, they're going to say, I'm sorry, who are you and why are you here? They're not going to know who you are because they're brand new, and it's going to keep going down that road. The departments will continue to run without you. And that's a hard pill to swallow for guys like us who are really into the job, who really care about the service and care about our departments. And when you go up to that department once you retire and you've got 10 guys going, I don't know who you are and you can't be inside here. And you're going to say, well, I gave 20 years to this department. You should know who I am. Yeah, you're going to be pissed at that, but it's not their fault. There's no pictures on the walls of Mike Goldstein and he served this time. It's just another guy with a mustache.
I went down that road when I was a captain. A lot of issues were going on at the station, and I was just immersed into trying to get those things fixed, and it started to wane on the family, where I was not engaged at home, and luckily my wife, she was like, what's going on, and kind of brought me back into it. And I transferred out of that firehouse. So you know what, I enjoy doing the job. I cannot be bogged down with all the crap that's going on here, but I can't fix no matter
Yeah.
what. But I'm going to go over here and run at this station with the people that I know, and that I can leave that stuff out. Help the home life a lot better. And the retirement thing, it's funny. I did 34 years, and retired as a battalion chief. And I knew what it was going to be, because a lot of my friends had retired. And the guys were like, "Oh, chief, we're gonna miss you." And I'm like, 3 months. And I said, and I'm only saying 3 months from my ego. I said, it probably won't even be that long. You guys ain't gonna be thinking about me. I said, but just be safe, do the job, and things like that. I haven't been back. I haven't popped in any of the firehouses since I retired over 3 years ago. And it's funny. And I told guys, I said, I retired December 1st, 2021, and at 23:59 and 59 seconds, my email was turned off. I was done. 34 years. Now, I retired for a total of 5 days before I got hired in Frederick, so I didn't do very well at retirement. But I'm all in at Frederick, and doing the things that I'm doing there. But I do take off the time that I need so I can be home with the family, and things like that, because it did take me to step back. When my wife was like, you need to get re-engaged with what's going on here. One of the smartest people that I know, and pulled me back. I'm still under the job, but you do have to take time for your family. You do have to be a good dad. You do have to be a good husband. Like we said at the top of the show, we have a lot of things that come down on us. Not only the illnesses, but also the family life and things like that. Divorce is rampant in the fire
Yes.
service.
Yes.
And you have got to stop and take a look at what you're doing in your life, and making sure that you're there for your family, and make sure you're there when your kids have the soccer games or the softball games, or whatever. Make sure that it's like, hey, I got enough time in, I can take off Christmas. I took off almost every Christmas. Once I had enough time in, I could take off Christmas, birthday parties, and things like that. But my kids understood that my shift work means that sometimes I'm not going to be home for Thanksgiving. I just couldn't get that time off. You can celebrate Thanksgiving anytime you want. You can celebrate Christmas anytime you want. The only thing you can't celebrate is New Year's Day, because you look kind of stupid counting down and screaming and carrying on the second.
But you just
But
got to be present. You got to be present for your family. They deserve it,
yes,
and they sacrifice as much as we sacrifice. And again, when we
sometimes more.
right, and when we
You know,
and our wives, our spouses, when they have to do a lot of these things by themselves, they understand the role because they accept it. They married it. Either they married into it, or eventually it just happened to be part of their life. And it is an addiction. We have addiction personalities, and the fire service becomes that drug to us. And it's something that to be proud of. But we also, again, we do have our priorities, and the family is that. Our wives are dedicating a lot of time. The other husbands are dedicating a lot of time to help keep the house running, and they're doing a lot of hard stuff without us. And it's really important, again, to when we're home, we need to be dialed in, we need to be present, and we need to be ready to give our attention to our spouses, to our kids, and understand that they need us as much as the fire service needs us.
yeah, sometimes more, and they're there to explain to the kids when they're very young, hey, Dad's not here because, and then they understand that it's not because he doesn't want to be here. It's like he's got to work.
Yeah.
That particular job is it takes you away, but yeah, again, we go back to, it's okay to be into the job. It's okay to be all in, balls out, the whole 9 yards. When you go home, be with your family.
Yeah.
You can still listen to the calls or whatever, but just be with family, listen
Absolutely.
to what they have to say, talk to them, celebrate, have fun, all those kind of
Yep.
things. But the biggest thing is like you said, being in a toxic relationship with a significant other is no better than being in a toxic relationship with your work, with the boss, that they're not going to listen. If they don't understand what they're doing to the shift, then you have to make a choice. And sometimes it's very painful. Hey, you know what? I'm going to switch to a different shift. I'm going to switch to a different station or whatever. Or maybe I'm going to switch to a whole different department.
And that's honestly it. That's exactly what I had to do. Is that I didn't have that luxury. It's a small town, small department. I couldn't change stations. I couldn't change shifts. I was stuck with those people. I was stuck with that one particular person, and I had to make that choice at 45 years old that I need to change departments. And that was really, really a big struggle to come to terms that I'm going to have to make a big life changing decision, because once I left that department, There was no returning. They made that abundantly clear. Like, if you leave, there's no coming back. And you have to have that support system at home to back you up on that. And we talk about those toxic leaderships and those toxic environments, that stressors in life. I'm bringing that home, and it could have been, I literally could have not run any calls, but I was still stressed when I came home because that one person made me incredibly stressed. And I was bringing that to my house. I constantly complained. I was constantly tired and exhausted mentally, where I just wasn't dialed in at home. I wasn't there for my wife or my kids because I just couldn't break away from that mental struggle. And again, that's that PTSD. That is that mental anguish that has just been drilled in my head that I'm not good enough and that I have nowhere else to go, that I have to take it and suck it up, or else I can leave and find no other place to go. And you have to understand, like, you need to make those big boy decisions that, do I stay? And you could try to work it out. But like we talk about, like, the grass is always greener on the other side, but you need to try mowing your own lawn. I mowed that lawn. I mowed it till that lawn was a bald spot. There was nothing else I could do. I had to go. I had to make that change. And again, it's for the better. And I had a strong support system at home where my wife said, yes, this needs to happen. Because if you don't do it, you can't come home and complain, because you have a choice. So I mean, it took me 3 times for this department that I'm on, because I was afraid of not being loyal to that previous department. And every time I had an interview scheduled, I would cancel it because I was afraid of him finding out and then giving me shit for going to other departments. Because it was, again, that whole loyalty thing was ingrained in me. And every time I had an interview, I was scared. I honestly prayed I didn't get the job. I would pray that I didn't get a job offer, because I was so afraid of having to make this decision. Do I stay or do I go? Are they going to like me over here? Am I going to miss a promotion? That was a big thing too, because they always kept dangling that carrot. Well, if you stay and you get over this hump, there's going to be a promotion for you. And I would be afraid I'm going to miss the chance of getting promoted, because let's be honest, we do care about promotions. If anyone says they don't, they're kind of full of shit. Like, right. You want to promote, you want to move up in the world. You've worked hard and you want to move up. It's okay to promote. Just earn it. And that was that carrot that he kept dangling over me. And it's like, you might have a chance, if you leave, that's it. So I was afraid of those missed opportunities. So I kept canceling my oral boards because I was afraid of missing out from previous departments, or obviously promotions.
It's good to have that support system at home. I mean, my wife she's a nurse, so she understands the dark humor and the things that we bring home and all that stuff. But, also recognizing that, hey, something's not right. You're not right. You're not like how you normally are. But being able to have that support system where you're going to do something that is, a little life changing, and for them to say, whatever it takes for you to be happy is what I want.
Exactly.
And if that's what you want to do, I'm all in 100%. I'm behind you. We'll figure it out. Things might be a little tight. We'll figure it out.
And that's what I loved about my wife, dude. She was just like that. She's like, I don't care what happens. I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. We'll figure it out. We'll make things work. Like you just said, like, things might be tight, might be a little stressful. We'll make it happen. And that's having that good teamwork at home. Your kids are going to see that. When your wife and the husband are on the same team, man, it's a great thing. And when you have that support system at home, it does make that decision process a lot easier. We talked about it. We touched just a little bit. It's like when you have that toxic leadership as well, you have that performance anxiety. And I like to talk about that a lot. Is that when I moved on to my new job, I still had that in the back of my head. I had these training scars. I was like an abused child, is that I was afraid to make a move because I was going to get yelled at. And when I joined my new department, I knew a lot of good stuff, but I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to do it. I was afraid I was going to get yelled at or ridiculed. And they were so accepting of me and the skills I had acquired and things I know. And I would stand back, and my battalion chief's like, no, dude, step forward. I know you know this stuff. Teach us. And that was the first time anyone's ever told me that in a department. I was always in the back because I felt I couldn't speak up because, I don't know anything. It was made very clear. You don't know enough. You can't speak up. You can't do it. And then the new department's like, no, we know you know this stuff. We wouldn't hire you if you didn't. So show us some stuff. So that meant a lot. But that performance anxiety, it's real. When you have a toxic leader who You can't do anything right. You're going to have that experience of feeling like you don't know what you're doing. You're afraid of him yelling at you. You're afraid of messing up, because we should all be comfortable making mistakes, right? We don't want to make mistakes on the fire ground per se, but it happens, but you can learn from it. But it's important to have a leader that when you make a mistake on the fire ground, they don't beat you up for it. And they don't embarrass you in front of your coworkers, that you learn from it. Like, again, I make mistakes every shift, not big ones, but I'll make a mistake, and it's important to be self-aware of it. But it's important to have a leader who might see it and might, you can talk about it later on in the kitchen going, yeah, I totally pulled that wrong line, or you know what, I missed that over there. And he'd be like, yeah, no, you're good. You're beating yourself up enough about it. So you already know you made that mistake. You want to nurture an environment so you can feel free to make mistakes. You got to fail forward. And I was in an environment where I was always afraid to fail in front of these people because it was an embarrassing moment. And he was always yelling at us, and nothing we ever did was right. And it reflects upon your performance on the drill yard or on a fire ground when you say, hey, I need you to cut a hole in that roof. And you go, I don't know, what kind of hole do you want? That's micromanaging. That's performance anxiety. Like, I would get in cold sweats when I had to go throw a ladder. I knew how to throw a ladder, but when he was watching, I was scared as shit because I knew something would have been wrong and he would have called me out in front of everybody.
Right. Like you said, you learned from that, you moved on, and you're in a much better place. So we're at the 1 hour mark, believe it or not. I like to keep them at an hour, but I think that the conversation was a necessary conversation, because there are people out there that are probably like, yeah, that's like my lieutenant, that's like my captain, or that's like our chief. How do we fix that? And I tell everybody, if you're watching this, you can drop me a comment or an email, or you can, send Mike. He's going to give you his information here in a few minutes. We're always willing to talk, share our experiences, try to help you with the things that we've gone through. Maybe we'll give you something that you need. You can always reach out to me at sidealphaleadership@gmail.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube page. So, Mike, where are you in the social media world? How can they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about some stuff, about nozzles, about hose lines, about anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is thecanreport2024@gmail. You can reach me out there. You can reach me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm an open book. So if they ever need to reach out to me, those are the best ways. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, or shoot me that email, and I'll do my best to answer you, and I'll do my best to give you some good answers. And if I can't find the answers, we'll find them together, and we can go down the right road and come out on the other side even better.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to be on the show. I appreciate you, been trying to get you on here over the last couple of months. It worked out very well.
Yeah.
But thanks for taking the time out of your home life to be on the show. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Good. Well, take care and be safe. If I don't see the next time I see you, maybe at FDIC, who knows? Maybe we'll cross paths at a training ground.
Are you going to be at Key City?
I will be at Key City. I'll be teaching there.
I think I'll see you there.
All right, man. Be safe.
All right, my brother.